I'm not sure if you can hear us.
Yep.
But we are working on it.
Shrug emoji.
This all works as a great example as a remote recording goes and audio. This is actually, we did this for a purpose.
All right, we're live. We're live now.
Oh, okay. I'm going to start from the beginning. And I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself. You're all great. Okay, great. Here we go. I'm going to start again. Thank you all for your patience. You're all delightful. Welcome to Podtails 2020. I'm Jordan Stillman, one of the organizers of Podtails. We are so excited to be putting on programming devoted exclusively to imaginative audio storytelling throughout the month of November. Today, we will be treating you to the panel Remote Production. Thank you so much for joining us. At the top of this program, we would like to offer a land acknowledgement, a statement that pays respect to the Indigenous people who live here and who had their land stolen from them by colonizers. It is only the very first, barest step in what we can do to support Indigenous people today. The following acknowledgement of what to keep in mind as we participate in this digital space is written by Adrian Wong of Spiderweb. Since our activities are shared digitally to the internet, let's also take a moment to consider the legacy of colonization embedded within the technology, structures, and ways of thinking we use every day. We are using equipment and high-speed internet not available in many Indigenous communities. Even the technologies that are central to much of the art we make leaves significant carbon footprints, contributing to changing climates that disproportionately affect Indigenous people worldwide. I invite you to join us in acknowledging all this, as well as our shared responsibility to make a good of this time and for each of us to consider our roles in reconciliation, decolonization, and allyship. Also, I am now going to pass it over to one of our panelists, Erin, to make an acknowledgement of country.
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge that I am broadcasting from the lands of the Bunwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and this land always was, always will be Aboriginal land. I would like to pay my respects to elders past and present, and would like to extend that respect to any Indigenous people who are watching. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. We would also like to just give a huge thanks to all of our sponsors. These are major contributors who helped sustain Podtails 2020 and allowed our show to continue virtually this year. You can learn more on our website sponsor page. Podtails 2020 is completely free. We believe in making the resources we're creating available and accessible to all. If you like what we're doing here, please consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/podtails. ASL interpretation for this session will be provided by Brendan C. Kazan-Maddox of Body Language Productions. Learn more about Brandon's work at brandonkazan-maddox.com. Please feel free to use the chat feature here on YouTube to say hello and ask a question of our panelists today. I'll be keeping an eye on the conversation and will pose a few of these questions to the group before the end of the hour. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Alexander Danner, the co-creator of Greater Boston and the sound designer on What's the Frequency. He is also a member of the sound design team for Unwell, a Midwestern Gothic. He has also contributed as a guest writer and/or sound designer to Ars Paradoxica, Star Tripper, and Our Fair City. He plays the narrator on Greater Boston and Krog on What's the Frequency, and has appeared as a guest in many indie audio dramas, including The Infinite Now, Mars' Best Brisket, Alba Salix, and others. Take it away, Alexander.
Thank you, Jordan. And so thank you all for being here. I am now going to introduce our wonderful panel of guests. First up, we have Cole Burkhardt, who has appeared in a variety of podcasts, including God's Head Incidental and Unplaced, and is the writer and director of Null and Void. When he's not voice acting or editing audio, he's attending conventions across the East Coast, discussing gender and sexuality in video games and anime. DJ Silvis is the head writer and producer for Monkey Man Productions and creator of Moonbase Theta Out. DJ provided a captivating list of their influences, some highlights of which are monkeys, robots, The Creature from the Black Lagoon, the theme song from Greatest American Hero, Forever, my friend, Lego Spacemen, the host segments of Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and all things strange and wonderful in the world. Erin Kyan is a cheerful force of nature with a zest for art and efficiency, whose productions include Love and Luck, Supernatural Sexuality with Dr. Seabrooke, and Nim's Nebulous Notions. You set me up for that one. Driven to build a world and artistic practice that's kind, intersectional, and accessible, Erin is on a quest to build a strong foundation for the fiction podcast industry in Australia, one based on community and inclusion rather than competition. I am just going to keep mispronouncing the word podcast over and over through all of this. That's the word I've chosen.
Good to know.
James Oliva, thank you, is writer, podcast creator, and voice actor, known best as the creator of the experimental psychedelic noir podcast, What's the Frequency? His voice has appeared in many productions over the past 5 years, including Greater Boston, Tides, The Pilgrimage Saga, and Mindfire. James is currently directing the upcoming historical fiction satire, The Land Whale Murders. Okay, so remote production. Remote production and recording has been a common practice in indie audio drama for really the whole time there's been indie audio drama. But in the current moment, in the time of COVID, recording remotely has become a particular necessity for anyone trying to continue production while being mindful of the health and safety of their cast and crew. But I believe everyone here included remote production as part of their process long before it became such a dire element. And so what I'd like to ask you first is what motivated your decision to record remotely, and what were the key advantages for you at the outset? And let's start with DJ.
Okay. Well, we were making the transition from a primarily stage company, a theater company, to doing audio fiction. And the first season was, of course, just one person, just Lehman, and he was someone who had worked with us previously and then moved away from Toronto. So being able to work with him sort of required remote production. But then when we moved to our second season and started casting additional characters, we were casting all these characters I had written not thinking I'd ever have to cast them. So I had made them very specific with very particular identities that I now had to find actors for. And it was much easier to be able to go to like the voice acting world at large than to try to find someone in Toronto. Plus, recording in studios is expensive.
Yeah. Cost is certainly a major part of motivation for so many of us, I think.
Yeah.
Cole, why don't we hear from you next?
Yeah, I used to work in theater, and so I'm pretty used to doing like in-person recording or in-person rehearsals. But when I started getting into audio production, I was a poor disabled Black person, so the thought of having to ask strangers to come to first to purchase or rent out a recording studio, and then having to ask strangers to come wasn't very good for my mental or physical health. So just remote production seemed just the way to go. It also meant that I could get like a wider variety of people, and also give more opportunities to people who like may not have the transportation to get out and to come in person, or may not have the money or time or energy just like me. It seemed the rational way to go.
Thank you. James?
Well, for me, I mean, I had such a large cast to try to get it done with. And I had really wanted to cast a wide net as far as diversity was concerned. So I thought no better way than to really kind of like open it up to basically anybody and everybody. So anybody from Europe or anywhere throughout the country would be able to partake in the show. And you know, I didn't feel like I would lose anything in the way of quality or feel any type of limitation that I was sensing from other creators that have a sort of a particular feeling about making sure you can do it in a studio and stuff like that. But I just felt like I could get a much more diverse and talented cast by opening it up that way.
Yeah, we'll definitely be talking more about the particular areas where some creators feel there can be a challenge in quality as we go through our questions and address, how we resolve those issues. So finally, Erin.
Yeah, so our shows have very different production styles because we tailor whether we're using remote or local production to the production. Love and Luck is entirely local in-person production. Nim's Nebulous Notions was entirely remote, and Seabrooke is a combination of both. Season 2 of Seabrooke is going to be entirely remote for obvious reasons. Yeah, it's interesting because accessibility is a big part of it, right? But there's two sides to that. Like, one of the reasons that we do Love and Luck in person is because it's more accessible for people who don't own their own equipment or things like that. Whereas, yeah, for other people, remote production is more accessible because they don't have to go anywhere. It's a lot easier to schedule things when you don't have to schedule everything else around going out. Yeah, so we're all over the place. We basically just use whatever works best for the specific show that we're working on.
Thank you. I do want to take a moment to focus more specifically on the value that remote production has in improving accessibility, particularly for actors with disabilities. And this is a two-part question. The first element being, how does remote recording help address these needs? But also, does recording remotely then raise other accessibility issues? And if so, how do you address those? And I'll take a hand on who would like to go first.
I mean, I can go. I have 1,000 opinions about accessibility.
Yeah. No, I know you have so much to say on this topic, and I absolutely welcome your thoughts here.
Yeah. So the main demographic that's most served by remote production are people with chronic illnesses, specifically, because again, it's that thing, you don't have to go somewhere, you don't need to book an extra support worker for that day, you don't need to spend transport money. You can also record whenever you feel up to recording. You don't have to be narrowed in on this very specific time slot. There are a lot of ways in which it's more accessible. The flip side, to answer your other question of does it raise its own problems? Oh boy, does it. The main one is cost. It costs money to buy equipment at home, to use at home, and disabled people are disproportionately negatively affected financially. The other major issues are people who are deaf or hard of hearing. Obviously, that can be a real roadblock. And there was something else, but I've forgotten it.
People who are, I know, especially with remote recording, people who have a hard time seeing or like sight blind.
Yes.
Because most of the strips I get are in PDF form, but those don't necessarily work with a screen reader.
That's something I just learned recently. I had in my head assumed PDF would be the most friendly, and I was wrong, and I've been not accommodating that, and I am going to change that.
And I think that is actually a really good example of what accessibility actually means, because people treat accessibility like it's a checklist, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can tick things off and that means you're accessible. But accessibility is just a word that refers to the relationship between disabled people and the thing they are trying to access.
And it changes from person to person.
Yeah, so you can't truly be accessible without taking into account that every disabled person's needs are different.
Would anyone else like to add?
I think you touched on a lot of great stuff. Even like I'm hard of hearing, I'm partially deaf in an ear, and also can't wear those big over the ear headphones because I can't have things touching me. So just being able to sit down and record for long periods of time, or going in through sessions and recording for hours at a time, is very exhausting. And so it's about trying to find those little moments that you can then go and record your lines like individually after that read through.
Thank you. Any last additions before we move on? Okay. All right. So from here, I'd like to move more into technical process. And to start with, I'd like to know what your remote recording processes look like. I'm particularly curious whether any of you use synchronous tools like Source Connect to directly engage an actor during recording, or to record multiple actors at a time, or if your actors are working entirely independently, and what that looks like. Let's start with James here.
Yeah, you know, I haven't used any of the software to sync up actors and to record live like that. In general, what I did is I set up individual one-on-one rehearsals and worked through the actor as far as like what it was I was expecting, and kind of trying to craft it so that all the other performances would sort of match up in the correct way. So everyone had like a kind of like a one-on-one experience, and then they were released and, you know, set out to go do their own recording. But one of the things that I did try to do at some point later on in the show, to do some pickups and some like last minute rewrites, I did have a little experience where we did some we didn't synchronize anything, but we did do a live recording from everyone's home and tried to do it all at once. One of the things that I felt that we lost during that time, and this is just a minor thing that can be overcome, but I lost some performance because some of the actors had become self-conscious about acting live against other actors all of a sudden. So they pulled back from their performance that they were giving in the original takes. So ultimately what I had to do was when we were done recording and rehearsing anyway, I had to go, hey, can you stick around for a second? Can you just re-record that for me real quick? Because you were holding back. I could feel it. You weren't giving everything that you could, and ended up having them just record solo anyway. But there was some benefit from having people be able to play off each other a little bit. But I do. It helped me also understand that I feel like remote recording in general has gotten a slightly bad rap. You know, like there seems to be like this sort of immediate recoil from like the idea of like, you don't have them all together. You don't what? So I just felt like there's a lot that could be done with it, and I felt like this was just another one of those things that kind of came up that was an unexpected stumbling block. But yeah, I hope that answers.
Yeah. I'm going to own that I'm one of the actors he's talking about who freaked out once we were working with other people.
You were there.
Yeah,
I did have you. I did. Yeah. Yep. I made you go back and re-record.
I definitely got very self-conscious once we were something approximating synchronous, especially doing it by phone, which phones are real bad for my social anxieties, which is a whole other thing. All right, let's go to DJ.
Sure. We have kind of an interesting process where we do live rehearsals. I'm still sort of stuck in theater mode to that point where I'm used to working out my scripts with the actors. So I actually send them the first drafts. We do live rehearsals of those drafts, and that gives them a chance to work against the other actors. It gives them a chance to like hear the material out loud. But then I do revisions and send them back to them, and they do their final recording still asynchronously. So that whole process has been interesting. It gives us a chance to work with the actors and direct them a little bit, but then again, going back to sort of accessibility, a lot of our actors have various physical or emotional reasons why they don't feel comfortable recording live. And it's nice to have that option for them to go back and record in the time that's right for them and the way that's right for them, and then just send it back to them. And gives us a chance to, work with people one-on-one as we feel the need. Cole actually joined our cast for Moonbase this season, a little bit late in the process, and we were able to bring him up to speed pretty quickly by just having some one-on-one sessions.
Nice.
Yeah, my remote recording situation is very similar to DJ's. Like, we basically have a table read, and then if we need more rehearsal time, we'll schedule another one. And then we just kind of send people off to do their thing. And a big part of that is time zones. When we're working with international actors, we're in Australia. Not many time zones intersect with us in a comfortable way. So it's very difficult to organize live. I think I've done one live remote recording in like all of the actors I've ever worked with. Everyone else has been let's do a table read, let's make notes, then I'll send you off and you send me your takes, and then I'll go through them and decide if anything needs redoing.
I would say my experience is a little bit more widespread because I used to do like actual plays, and with those, there's no table readings. You just go, and we would do everyone was recording remotely, and then we would use like a backup like OBS or Craig, which is something you can use to record through Discord. And then we would use it's a website called time.is, and that it just shows you what time it is. And we would say, okay, on the soonest like 30 seconds, we'll do a clap. And that's how we would line up the audio files in Audacity or whatever I was using at the time, which is a little bit difficult, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty good. I've also done like live recordings as well, especially with God's Head Incidental. We would do a read through and then go through and record all of the lines as well. Which was interesting. We would do a clap with that, but that one didn't have to be quite as precise because the audio editors were going to go through anyways and do dialogue edits. And I've always been a big fan of just having like OBS or something going anyways, because I think getting those first table reads are very good for like backer or Kickstarter rewards as well. And so having that ability for actors to go through and re-listen to any of the like advice we've given or any of the takes they've done the first time is super helpful as well. But I've also just done the read-throughs and then everyone go record remotely on your own, just because sometimes it's easier for time zones and time in general.
Yeah, I should also add that when I say we've all done it this way, it's very rare that I would, like, this is almost entirely for people who only have a short amount of, like, hours of recording. Like, we're talking a couple of hours of recording. Like, we have yet to work with a main lead actor in a long form. Like, we did work with our NIM performers, but that entire series is, like, 2 hours long. So we have yet to work with a remote long form protagonist actor, and I think I would probably change things up quite a bit for that, because you kind of need a lot more work and interaction and just general vibing with your lead actor for a much longer piece of work, because even in Seabrooke we record our main actor locally. So yeah, I think that's one thing that would change drastically depending on the work. Is I think my entire workflow would change with an international or remote like protagonist. I think that would be very different.
Okay, I'll do it.
All right, you pushed me enough.
You can audition like everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. And it's something where I wanted to mention as well that we only moved into the style that I'm describing now for our third season, the one that we're recording right now. We moved from season 1, we had just one actor for 20 episodes. Season 2, we added like 5 more, but it was still primarily monologue based. So we would just have them, like, again, we went through the rehearsal process, but they recorded rehearsals and sent them to me. But now our third season is almost completely dialogue. And so we had to completely reinvent how we worked with the actors. And it's been quite the experience. We do record all of our rehearsal sessions too, in part because usually all of our actors aren't there. So it gives them a chance to hear the bits that they weren't around for. And then you get to hear Cass, my co-producer, do impersonations of them, which is pretty amusing.
It's very good.
But also just to, I mean, I still use them for reference as well when I'm revising, so.
So this does lead nicely into my next question, which we've touched on it, but I'd like to go into more specific detail. And this is about the challenge of directing remote actors. and whether you have tips for getting the performances you want from actors who are recording independently without live direction. And I'm particularly interested in how you handle the challenge that actors can sometimes have in not having a scene partner to play off of.
I
Oh,
could talk a little bit
yeah,
about it.
please.
So I find the best thing is to, for me at least, the challenge is if I don't have enough people to fill all the roles and have to like fill in for someone, I can't also keep an eye on what I need to direct my actors about. So just having like a couple extras or making sure that there's a time where people can fill in those roles, so you can focus on the actual actors' performances are very helpful. Also just recording them and then being able to go back and like giving them notes for pickups and things like that is super helpful as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because I have only ever done sort of one-on-one directing. Most of our things, even if characters are having dialogue, we're usually only working with one actor at any given time. So I actually really like that. I think it means you can tailor your direction extremely specifically. You can make room for any questions or issues that your actor might have. You can make room for them to experiment a little bit. Without having to sort of redo entire scenes. I think it's really good because I think you can hone in on exactly what you want from this specific actor. Whereas, you know, when you're dealing with a larger group or even just two people, you're trying to direct the energy as well. Whereas if it's one-on-one, you can direct just that one person. And that energy can be built in post, as weird as that sounds.
Nice. And I think you're bringing up that element of experimentation leads us nicely to James.
Yeah. Well, okay. So for my concept about how I wanted to tackle the problems of how to get certain performances and stuff like that, and it's something that I think it works for just about any show in the sense of that. I had like a 3-step idea for like the take. So I was like, give me 3 takes, give me 3 files for that episode. The first take, I want think of like, because I have a theater background like some of the other people in this chat here, and so I do get very much involved. Like I like talking about the theory of like, you know, like from an actor's perspective about picking apart like what your character was doing, where they were, environment, you know, things like that. So those are the type of the discussions that I would have with the actor. But for the 3 takes, the first take would be more like described as a black box theater sort of environment. So I want you to keep it intimate, kind of minimal in your performance, something that is much more realistic and grounded. And then I was like, all right, well, for our second take, we're going to do back of the house acting, Broadway, musical theater, you know, mugging across the stage so that everyone can see it. And I was like, just go broad, go super broad, go as broad as you can. And then for the third take, I was like, that's your take. Whatever you want to do. I was like, you've done it twice already. You should have a concept about where you're going with it. But ultimately what I found was the key element was getting to the core of what the character is doing and what's happening in that scene. And as long as we were having that conversation, the performance that I was getting was what I wanted. And so to make sure that there's a continuity there is to also have that with, say, their scene partner, the same type of conversation. And because I know what I've already and what I'm going to direct the other actor with, I can then correspond that with how I want that other actor to go. Now, they can give you variants because what's great about those 2 takes is that I can cross-pollinate them. So I don't have to choose just one or the other. And then what I get is if just some case and some minor possibility is my actor gives me 1 note. So they're like, no, it's all grounded, it's all quiet, it's all intimate, but they don't give me any like color or variation in their dialogue. I have the second take. And then I can go into that second take, and if they gave me these sort of broader, bigger takes, but still realistic and usable, I can cross-pollinate them, and then I create this varied performance, and that's the other aspect. So you cover yourself by giving them the permission to go, not be so narrow with like, all right, you can only give me this. You can only give me this performance, and then just put that in their head, because they're going to give you just that, and then maybe slight variations. But if you give them permission to go all over the place and give you several different versions, which I know sometimes some of us may choose that, hey, I don't want to deal with 3 different full takes to go through. It's a lot. It is a lot. I hated it, but at the same time, if I wanted to get what I wanted to get, I had to go through it. So that's my thing. They had to do 3 takes. I had to listen to 3 takes.
That's like the spookiest Halloween thing to threaten like directors with, is like, just get up close and whisper, take selection. It's too scary.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, it could be rough, and I'm not going to get any breaks when it comes to the new show that we're working on. There's like 100 actors, so it's going to be its own little task, but I'm trying to get through it alive.
Thank you, DJ.
Oh,
I know you spoke to this a little bit at the beginning and kind of set us off, but.
Yeah, I talked a little bit about how like cast helps us out and stuff. I did want to jump back a little bit to sort of offer a counterpoint to, sometimes there are groups of actors that I feel like you really have to work together. For instance, in Moonbase, we have our scientists who are going to be a big part of the new season, or like I'm calling them our science bros. And they are sort of, for the first half of the season, the comic relief for some really big emotional stuff that's happening in the show otherwise. And it was really important to us that we got them all together. We had to juggle schedules quite a bit, but to like bounce back and forth the way that they needed to, and to work off each other the way they needed to, they really needed to hear that at least in a rehearsal. So I think it's important to understand, again, that there are different situations for different actors and possibly different groups of actors where you might need them. I don't think most of them, we ever worked with them one-on-one. It was all group work, so.
Yeah, I'm going to add a little bit of my own experience here, because on Greater Boston, we use a blended system. We record a lot together. But again, because our cast is large, we often can't get the whole cast together. And as we went on, we did start casting more and more remote actors. And there are certain pairings that you just get so much out of them when they're playing off each other, especially if you're looking for comedy or comic moments, or scenes where people really need to be talking over each other and interrupting. And that I find is the hardest thing to create in the edit, though not impossible.
Well, we had that I was able to experience that firsthand working on Greater Boston, having been here for the first time and recording something live, and I can attest to that. I mean, there was a big difference for me to be able to work off of a scene partner. Sure. Yeah,
James, from the beginning, James was our first and only remote actor, because he was in LA when we started, and now he's on the East Coast, and that has changed the dynamic a bit.
I want to bring something up that I think James touched on a little bit that I think is also important, and that's keeping open lines of communication. A lot of times I will like prepare notes for actors like ahead of time about their character, and like I'll talk about like the actual scenes a little bit more in depth than what is just on the script, and just being aware of making sure that actors feel comfortable to like ask questions, or giving like pauses in between scenes or in between I guess recording sessions to talk more in depth and make sure that people really have like a strong understanding of their character or their motivations as well.
And alongside that, I'll add like I get the best performances out of my actors when I let myself be super weird with my direction.
Yeah.
Like, just like I have given directions that's like, okay, I want you to do that again, but you know that feeling when you've got your hand in the cookie jar, but like then someone walks it, like I want you to use that, and it's super, being really weird with direction gets really good results.
I want you to imagine you're stepping out of a Ferrari in the middle of a snowstorm and give me that performance.
It's because it gives people, it sounds weird, but it gives people the right emotional like thing. They're like, well, that's weird, but I get it.
It's a movie.
It takes them out of themselves a little bit, and that's actually important for actors. Sometimes they kind of very inward and very self-conscious, and it's that's why too, like everyone here's probably noticed, your first take that you get from the actor is like, and it's okay.
Yeah.
And the second one's like, oh, this is good.
Yeah.
I've had some
Third one.
actors who their first take is always the best one. They're weird
wow.
wizards. I don't understand them.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
really
I have actors who
strange.
get way too inside their heads after the first take, and just
Mhm.
you have to like take what they give you from the beginning.
Oh, wow,
Yeah,
that's so interesting.
I find in most cases the third take is the best take, but yeah, no, there's a couple who is just like, nope, take the first recording and use it.
Oh, cool.
Um,
Yeah, I'm waiting for that.
That makes me nervous as to which one I am. Oh goodness.
I mean, neither one is the wrong one to be.
I think you know. You hear it. You're like, oh, this is the better tape.
I mean, I think that's truer with actors who tend to give more consistent performances in the first place than with actors who are going to give more varied takes, at least in my experience. But I want to speak against what Erin was saying about the giving weird directions, because I really agree with that. Even sometimes giving contradictory direction. I forget exactly what the scene was, but I had directed an actor. Okay, give me the scene as if you're just thoroughly angry about what just happened. Okay, that was great. Now do it as if you're overjoyed about what just happened. Okay, now's the real one. Do both of those. and like that was the one. That was the one that worked.
I'm going to give a shout out to somebody that isn't even in this chat right now, but Faith McQuinnan. If anyone ever wants to hear a really great directing story, Faith McQuinnan has probably the best tale about how to draw out an actor's performance that I've ever had the pleasure of sitting to listen to. So, and I've said this a few times. I said it to her several times, but yeah, no, if you can ever like just tweet it out or something like, hey, tell that story.
I'm curious.
Yeah, no, it's so good. It's the best.
I think we will have to solicit that.
Yeah, please.
So next, I would like to ask, again, this is going into more technical and perhaps increasingly technical aspects. But when we do get to the line edit stage of this, and there can be challenges where your recorders were in very different places, they have very different background environments, and you're trying to put them in scenes where they're supposed to be in the same place at the same time interacting. What are your tips for dealing with that, whether it's recording quality, whether it's room tone or reverb, or even just challenges in matching them emotionally in the performances they're giving?
So first I cry. And yeah, it's something we struggled with, particularly in NIB, because it was a very complex production for a lot of reasons, but our main actors, their mics sounded really different. And to a certain degree, we could get away with that because one of the characters' voices was only on speakers, which, oh, you love an in-universe reason. But I mean, the boring technical side of it is just a lot of EQing, like a lot of like tweaking the EQ until people sound like they're in the same room. Because like, I mean, there's all the basic stuff like your noise removal and that kind of thing. We do a lot of like, we probably even less than we do rehearsals. We basically do recording setup like meetings with our actors just to make sure that we're getting the best quality we can get. And also, like straight up, when we have auditions, we audition for mic sound at the same time. Like we're always going to be trying to cast based on people whose audio quality matches the project.
I got a tip.
Yes, Cole.
Lower your standards.
Yeah.
like it is okay if a character's mic isn't the greatest if the actor is fantastic. Like it doesn't I as a listener do not care if those actors don't sound perfect. If they vibe off each other and if they sound good together, or if they give really strong performances, it's okay if their audio isn't great. Lower your standards. I mean, it's
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I think that's especially true now because everyone has gotten used to using Zoom. Everyone's using Skype. So everyone's really accustomed to people sounding different now.
If you do like legitimately like want to make sure everything sounds okay and someone sounds different, for Null and Void, one of our main characters is and this I guess is a minor spoiler, one of our characters is an AI, and so it was all right that their audio quality wasn't perfect because we were going to be putting a filter on it over it anyways. But yeah, be more open to having shitty mics out there. It's okay.
Yeah, no, I have absolutely done that where, I know there's an actor and I'm listening to the recordings. It's like, oh, this isn't great. No, but I love this actor. I'm using it. I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And frequently I do cast that as someone who's mostly having their lines over the phone.
Right.
That was one of our
times where we just...
I'm sorry, Erin first and then James.
It's very quick. I was just going to say that's one of the reasons that like our show Seabrooke is based on phone calls, because it meant we could be a lot more open with audio quality, which is good because we have like 40 actors. Yeah.
James, what were you going to say?
Oh, nothing. I was actually just backing up Cole here for a moment and just saying that I think the acting sort of comes first. You try to do your best to work with the other actor to either there were plenty of people on our show that for what's the frequency that didn't quite hit the mark where we would want the sound quality to be, and always there was this opportunity to go, okay, well, what can we do? Let's talk to the actor. Let's see if we can improve it and how much you can make little adjustments, because sometimes the actor maybe just didn't realize they had something else going wrong. Like I know for when I was first starting out, I had everything set up right, but I was recording directly into my computer. And I didn't realize my computer's mic was the mic I was using to record everything. And I couldn't, for the life of me, figure out why it sounded like crap. But I was doing my best to edit it to like sound better, but I wasn't booking anything. And so it took me forever. I think I was already like working on Greater Boston when we discovered that I was recording out of my computer mic, and I was like, oh, this has got to stop. But
you are one of the people actors, I put on the phone at times.
Right, because I was recording from my computer mic and we didn't know that's what I was doing.
There was also the one scene I also wrote in that there was a dishwasher running in the background so that I could have that masking.
Yeah, the first couple of episodes, we were like trying to figure out how to better my audio quality at first. But once we fixed it, we figured out that was what I was doing. It was improved quite a bit, and that sometimes that's what it takes to work with the actor, to have the time to say, you know what, this actor's really awesome. Maybe we can work with them. And I think that's the right sort of angle to take, especially when you're casting and you want to cast that net and you're like, this person's fantastic. Their audio quality is really worrisome. Let's talk. Try to work it out, and then see if you can get by on your own with it, and then decide from there. Depends on your project. If you're trying to have a certain thing and it's not going to lend itself well to it, then I guess, that's that. But, to try to work is really kind of my point, I guess.
Yeah, it's something that I think you need to budget time in your process for, the same way that you budget extra money for unforeseen accidents. You really need to budget time, especially if you're expanding your cast, if you're working with people who haven't done like remote recording before. We had a couple different actors who moved over the course of recording this season, and so we had to work with them to try to get the same sound again. We had some people who are actually fairly well known who have just never like really recorded remotely, and so had to learn how to do that. So it's just like building enough time into the process to work with people when these issues come up.
I know if you've got it in the budget, I've had some people like mail a different mic to some of their actors, like, oh, here, this one isn't working, here, borrow my setup for the however long we're going to be recording for, and that'll make a big difference too. But of course, that's also if you've got the money and availability for it.
I've occasionally
knows how to use the mic.
I've occasionally sent actors moving blankets for damping areas, which Harbor Freight, you can sometimes get them for $7 each. We didn't have much budget, but we could do that.
Or even again, like some actors aren't used to, if they haven't done a lot of recording remotely, aren't used to listening to their lines before they send them to you.
Right, which sorry, that baffles me.
No, I get that, but just sort of telling them, okay, this is the stuff we've heard. We've heard room noise. We've heard like a lot of plosive problems. If you can just listen to your lines before you send them and let us and like realize that's happening.
The one
I think one of the things too is, Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'm just going to add one additional tip, which is especially now since a lot of our actors that we've tried to continue working with don't have recording setups, and you're trying to work with someone who they've got their computer mic and it's way off from what you need. Cell phone mics are way better than computer mics, and you can actually go a long way just having them use their own cell phone to record instead of the internal computer mic.
Isn't Flyest Fables, wasn't that first bit done on a phone mic? Or am I thinking of something else? But there are a lot of...
I don't know, but that's interesting.
I vaguely remember. But yeah, you can do a lot of good stuff on a phone. And they've got editing apps on now anyway, so you could feasibly do an entire podcast just from your phone.
Yeah, we've added in some bit parts from like Patreon backers and stuff, and most of the time if they don't do this normally, I just tell them to use their cell phone.
Yeah. We did that. We had some ads to record actually, and so we scripted them as phone conversations and had the actors record them on their phones, and it sounded fine. James, I think you were starting to say something else, or am I misremembering who was? I don't know.
No, it's me.
Probably.
Yeah, no, probably is right. No, what I was saying is I actually was going to say something to what Deej was saying was that to make yourself available as best you can, to get on, as somebody who's got the remote actors, is to make yourself available. They have a question, they have a problem, getting on a video call to be like, oh yeah, just put the clamp up on the top there for your moving blanket, and yep, that should work out well. Now point your mic that way, set up that way, you'll be good. It'll sound great. Like taking the time to kind of do stuff like that, or really just anything having to do with their questions or issues is incredibly important, and ultimately doesn't take very much effort on our part. So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, just reminding actors to keep their pets out of the room. I've had entire takes ruined because you can hear my cat eating in the background, and I'm like, Athena, come on.
Or at the very least, like, still send me that audio because that's great.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
you got some free Foley.
The trouble takes are fantastic for bloopers.
Yeah.
And bloopers are the best. Yeah. Honestly, a lot of times the bloopers end up in the show because so often they're just so on
I don't
point.
know what it is, but sometimes the takes that sound the greatest also have like an audio issue for whatever reason, and it's
so frustrating. So we're in our last 10 minutes, so I would like to ask Jordan if we have some questions from the audience.
We do. And if anyone else has any questions, feel free to shoot those into the chat, and we will potentially ask them. All right, so the first one here is from Tal. What are some good PDF alternative formats to send scripts in?
That's a
Google
good
Docs.
question.
Yep.
Google Docs.
Google Docs.
Google
Word
Docs
documents
are the most accessible option because not only can a screen reader pass it, it is extremely easily editable on the fly. So if you have an actor that maybe needs a bigger font or more spacing, something like that, you can just change it instantly. Google Docs is the one I recommend the most because it's just the most flexible.
Perfect. And free, which is
and free.
Another nice perk.
All right.
Automatically, it's great.
Yay. So here's a general question. Are there situations where it makes sense to do some recording synchronously and some asynchronously within the same production? Like, say, if two characters playing off of each other is super important, but another character doesn't interact with the others as directly.
I would say, especially in those situations, I'll do any like heavy chemistry heavy scenes, I'll record at the same time. And then anything that's more monologue focused, we'll go do a read through and then have them record independently.
Yeah, I think with things that have to do with people interrupting each other, which I think Alex had brought up, things that have to do with misunderstandings and or stumbling over words are good opportunities as well. Like I think the hippopotamus bit would have really worked awesomely if, like, even if we just rehearsed stuff each other a little bit first and then went off and recorded separately. But I mean, that was almost all completely without me in the room for
That's
that
a
sort
scene
of.
in Greater Boston he's referring to.
Yeah, sorry about that. What, everyone here hasn't watched it? I mean, listen to it. Listen, I mean, come on, everybody, get, and then go out and watch it.
Netflix steal
Yeah.
win.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I just
yeah, we did record synchronously for some of our like miniseries stuff when it was just two characters.
Mhm.
But now that we've got like sometimes 10 people in a scene, it's just not realistic.
Yeah, and Greater Boston has always been blended. And in the first season, James's scenes were all asynchronous until we got to the kind of pinnacle scene at the end between him and the mayor. And it's a scene where the emotion of it really needs to build steadily through the whole scene. And we recorded it asynchronously, and it was fine. But then we just wanted more, and we had the privilege to do this, but we flew him out and to get the actors in the room together, and like the scene just really exploded in a very different way that it needed. But yeah, most of our stuff is done a blend of synchronous and asynchronous. Sometimes we'll have a scene with 5 people and we've got 3 of them in the room together and add in the other 2.
Yeah. I mean, I have a personal rule. If you pay for my flight to go anywhere, I will show up.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That seems fair.
If you say like, hey, I'm going to fly you out here, I'm coming.
Yeah.
Coming. And that's just personal life too. If you guys, anybody needs me to
Yeah.
just show up.
If any of our international fans want to get me out of this hellscape, I'm good to go. Let's go.
Yeah.
I am in Canada, folks. I mean, I'm just putting that out there.
Anyone else want to add to that one about synchronous and asynchronous? Okay, Jordan.
That's all the questions I currently have.
That's all the questions we have.
I had a couple others, but y'all answered them. So.
How dare you?
Then I think at this point I would just like to ask if any of you have some final thoughts you'd like to offer, whether it's additions to something we've talked about or something that we didn't touch on.
Not particularly. I mean, these guys are all awesome. I can say that, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's demonstrably true.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't really have any other thoughts. I think we touched on a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
If you'd said literally anything other than, do you have anything to say? I probably would. But because you said that, my mind has gone blank.
By the way, that included Brandon. My everyone appears awesome. So.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Brandon has been amazing.
Brandon is wonderful.
Okay, then while we're in our final minutes, I am going to take a moment to acknowledge that there are already some people Googling Brandon's work, which is musical and choreography performance that incorporates ASL. It is astonishing work. I recommend looking it up.
Hell yeah.
That's awesome.
There's something so enjoyable about making interpreters talk about themselves.
Yeah.
And I think then we have come to our end. Thank you all so much for taking part. This was a wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed speaking with all of you.
Thank you for being our moderator.
Yeah.
Oh,
thank
it
you.
was
Thank you for
my
stepping in.
honor.
Thank you for controlling the chaos.
And now I'll pass it back to Jordan for our outro.
Thank you very much. And thanks to all of you in the audience for coming. This session is part of PodTales 2020, 3 weekends of programming brought to you in partnership with the Sarahs, the Sarah Lawrence College International Audio Fiction Award. For a full list of sessions, visit podtales.org. That's podtales.org. And be sure to subscribe to PodTales on the podcatcher of your choice to find the showcase selections we'll be featuring from now through the end of the month on our feed. And as a reminder, PodTales 2020 is completely free. We believe in making the resources we're creating available and accessible to all. If you like what we're doing here, please consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/podtales. Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.